Hi, this is Kirk Fleming, and this is my project, a framework for database design and modeling for MICU locations. MICU stands for Mobile Intensive Care Unit. They are vehicles that are staffed by mobile intensive care nurses or paramedics, and you can think of them as emergency room on wheels that make house calls. So the MICU program, the hospital-based MICU program in New Jersey started back in the 1970s. And it's hospital-based in order to ensure quality. And originally the MICU were located based on population size. But over the past 50 years, New Jersey's population has changed, as detailed in the slide. In addition, hospitals have come and gone, and they've merged into larger hospital systems. So the question is, are those MICU locations, are they still optimally placed in order to produce the lowest response time? So this project proposes using emergency call location data, which was not readily available 50 years ago. It's extracted from submissions by the hospitals to the NEMSIS database system. NEMSIS stands for National EMS Information System. It has a separate database that includes current and proposed MICU locations. It uses a program called ArcGIS, which will map a shortest route from one point to another and give an estimated drive time. The output of that ArcGIS program is a data file that we can use to examine alternate locations, and the mission is to see if relocating an existing MICU base or adding an additional one will significantly reduce response times. So the requirements for the system, there's going to be a patient ID included so that we can tie any information back to the larger NEMSIS database in case we want to do further research. It's going to include detailed address information. It's going to include the time of the emergency so we can see if the results vary by time of day or time of year. There's protected patient information in this database, so we're going to have good security. We have to have backup capability. And finally, we have to have enough flexibility so that we're able to produce a large enough database so that we have credible results coming out of this ArcGIS system. So to test the system, I was using a flat file, but I think the ideal system going forward would be a relational database. A relational database would provide flexibility, it would provide ease in updating. You could tie back to the NEMSIS relational database. You could make use of ready-made tools for creating, reading, updating, and deleting records. I would think SQL and R. MySQL would be tools you might start out with. If you want to use the access to larger databases, you're probably going to have to go with something like Oracle or SAS. Questions I would ask users: what's their measure of success? How do they define success? The literature would say that time is the measure you should be looking at, but perhaps users would be interested in distance. Should we be able to examine more than one MICU location at a time? Should we be able to model multiple hospital systems at a time? What are the requirements to add an additional MICU? New Jersey has a goal that 90% of all responses should be less than 15 minutes. That might be a good rule. Who's the audience for these results? What information will they need in order to get comfortable with the output? Is this going to be a one-off effort? Will we be updating it over time? Will we only use actual data, or could we use what-if data? For example, what if a new nursing home is added to the area? How would that impact results? Would it be useful to tie into other databases if we had access to weather data? Would that be useful to tie into? And should we be focusing on data from specific hospital systems? So for use case, a data analyst is going to be the person who's going to be responsible for producing these reports. They're going to be producing the reports for operations managers and the medical directors. The existing MICU locations are going to provide a baseline for comparison for any additional work, and all of this work will be new. The operations manager is going to be focusing on whether the cost is justified, or the time savings will justify the cost to relocate an existing database, an existing MICU base. And the medical director is going to be focusing on whether the time savings is impacting medical care significantly enough to justify these changes. So this is the entity relationship database for this project, and you can come back and view the slide at your leisure and take more time with it, but just let me quickly go over some important details. The right side is the location information for the emergency, so it includes the patient ID, the time of day, the address information. The left side of the database includes information associated with the MICU location, so whether a hospital is supplying the location, whether a public entity is supplying the location, what's the address information associated with that. A particular MICU location may have more than one unit, so it has entity relationships. This would be a one-to-many location for the MICU bases. Each MICU base would have information on the nurse or paramedic and their credentials, who's working on the truck, and also the unit number associated with the truck. And finally, by combining that information with the patient information, we get this database out of the ArcGIS system, which is the response times, and that's the file that we're going to be using to make decisions. I've included a table list with more detail about the entities on the earlier diagram. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these diagrams. I'll let you come back at your leisure and look at them in more detail. But let's talk about reports and querying. So one report is just, if we move an existing MICU base, do we get better results? Another might be, if we look at moving a base based on time of day or time of year, do we get different results? New Jersey has a big tourist influx during the summer where people come to the shore. I would think you would get different results out of this analysis if you looked at it in the summer versus in the winter. What happens if you add an additional MICU base to an additional truck to an existing location or alternate location in the area? What if we look at two hospital systems in tandem and coordinate the results? So hospital systems are adjacent to each other. Should we be looking at nearby bases on this territorial line? I think if we coordinate the results, we probably get better results. And that says, if we look at all hospitals statewide, can we convince ourselves that we're actually getting optimal results for the state in total? Here's sample output from the ArcGIS system. I included 150 calls that I went on. Those are the little dots. The circles with the houses in them are actually the locations of different existing bases and proposed bases. The lower arrow points to my current base, and the top arrow points to an alternate location that produces an interesting result based on this data. My current location, which is this cost matrix, which also comes out of ArcGIS, shows that the average response time is 13.75 minutes. But if we move the base to Civic Square in the town where I worked, we'd have almost a 2-minute savings. Now, if this had more data in it, if it had data from all times of year, all seasons, and certainly day and night, and we got this similar result, I think this would be something that the operations manager and the medical director would want to discuss, that whether a 2-minute savings is worth moving a base. As I mentioned earlier, the database includes protected patient information, so we would want to include security for this. I would propose that the work be done at the same location, the corporate headquarters, where the submissions to the NEMSIS database is done. The two computers would have a network connection only, that the new computer where this work is being done, there's no means to copy data onto a separate disk. The on-site computer would have to be password protected, and that all of this work, there should be an audit trail for the activities, and that audit trail is checked regularly to make sure no one is misusing the information. So let me finish up. The MICU program in New Jersey has shown to be a success, but since its inception in 1970, there's been no coordinated statewide effort to see if those MICU bases are still optimally located. And this project proposes a framework so that we can capture address of emergencies and MICU bases to see if alternate locations can reduce response time and improve patient care. And I'll just finish up with a couple of slides. These are the references that you can see here. you can come back and look at that at your leisure. And I'll say thank you very much.